welcome to another episode of Never Seen It Film Club, the film club where we watch films that you've never seen. Look who I magicked back!
It's the Prince! He's here!
Yes!
Hello!
Everyone missed you so much last month, Robert. Where were you? You were off.
I was off gallivanting. I went off to Portugal for a couple of weeks, so I needed a break.
Have a break. Have a Kit Kat.
Thunderbirds, go!
Everyone needs a break. Well, we're very happy to have you back because you were very much missed.
Thank you.
But yes, so we've got you back in very fitting attire, I feel like, for Grey Gardens.
It's very difficult to keep the line between the past and the present. Do you know what I mean? It's awfully difficult. I suppose I won't get out of here till she dies or I die.
Who is she? This is the worst one of my wedding pictures.
The others look worse.
And she looked like a girl that had everything.
Yeah, but as colour-wise, about as different from Grey as I can get. But I feel that Little Edie would have approved of.
Your costume is very good.
Yeah,
Not
costume.
outfit, or a costume.
Costume, yeah.
Yeah, I have a well-documented love of this film, so I will be entirely biased the entire time. So yeah, I have seen Grey Gardens far too many times for a sane person.
Like more than once.
Like more than once. I genuinely think it's one of the most beautiful documentaries that's ever been made in terms of how it's shot and put together. But that's just, again, whimsical and lovely to me. But what's your opinion, Robert?
So I saw this when I was doing my undergrad film degree at Queen's many, many years ago, and the impression that I was left with was of a film that left me rather uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I had slightly, I thought I misremembered, but I'd forgotten the screechiness of it. It does feel like quite a screechy film, and I don't think that had sort of enamored me to it. And I actually, in the years that went by, I thought this was a film that was about an insane asylum. And rewatching it today, I don't know that I was wrong exactly. I feel that, I mean, that element of almost like being trapped in a mental institution does still sit with it. It is a little bit One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at times. It is an uncomfortable view. It's not a film, I mean, it's still not a film that I really gel with massively.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Because it is such an uncomfortable watch, and you know, in the years since I first seen it, I mean, I've got a little bit more involved in mental health awareness stuff as well, which I kind of sit down and I'm set with a lot of those people who've gone through that debate. Is this a film that is exploitation? Is this a film that's taking advantage of two people who were incredibly vulnerable, or is it a really useful, complicit documentary that is a fascinating insight into two people who were from the upper echelons of society but had rather fallen by the wayside?
It's all of those are excellent points and up for debate. I would be of the side point of the viewpoint in terms of the exploitation point of view. I think it is an incredibly exploitive film, but at the same time, without this film being made, these two people would have been left to and forgotten about. And luckily, no spoilers except total spoilers. Get out of here. It's 1975. If you don't want spoilers, go watch a different show.
3
Spoilers.
2
But what's nice about it is that through the documentary, you know, there was a small, ineffective kind of lean on Jackie Kennedy to kind of help her relatives in need. They got a little bit of money from that, but they were able to sell Grey Gardens. Spoilers again.
Spoilers.
Big Edie passed away very sadly about a year and a half after.
Yeah, but 2 years after
this
released,
got
yeah.
released. But then Little Edie was able to sell Grey Gardens through the kind of cult kind of nature of getting that kind of servitude. And she went to Miami and lived out her days swimming on the beach. And I'm like, do you know what? It couldn't have happened to a nicer person. But I do think it's very. You would never make this documentary now.
No. Well, I don't know if that's true. I mean, first of all, I think that maybe some context is needed for anyone who hasn't seen the film.
No context.
And this one swimming naked in the fermentarium.
I am the Lizard Queen!
Because, I mean, it's basically a film about... it's a couple of cousins of Jackie Kennedy Onassis who live in this mansion, Grey Gardens, in the East Hamptons in New York.
Yep.
And in 1971-72, they were faced with eviction by the equivalent of the local council, because the house was falling into disrepair. It was littered with rubbish and wild animals and an abundance of cats. It was basically like unsafe for human habitation.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
And there was a National Enquirer headline, which then led to a New York Times coverage of the story. And then one of their cousins, Lee Radiswell, came in and decided to make a documentary about... She came in to make a documentary about her own family, which included a day trip out to Grey Gardens, and they shot an hour or two of footage with the two Edies. And the Maisels brothers were hired to do the filming for it. And then that documentary basically went and got buried for 50 years. It came out in 2017, or a version of it came out in 2017 under the title That Summer. You can check that out as well online. And then the Maisels came back a couple of years later and decided to do their own documentary about the family that was completely separate. And in between, Jackie Kennedy Onassis and her sister had managed to raise the funds to basically clean up the house and ensure that the Edies managed to carry on living there. And what we come into with this documentary is a kind of slightly sanitized version of the house. It's after the cleanup has been done. Although, I mean, you watch it and it's still...
Yeah, it's still cringe, like
all the cat poo everywhere.
Yeah, just the cats, the raccoons.
I don't mind the raccoon. The raccoon's like a little friendly trash panda that lives in the attic.
Is that better?
I don't know. It's worse. It's so much worse.
It's like, look at him. They're feeding him. But it's like when the cat's taking a piss behind the painting and you're just like...
Yeah, it's very... when you first get told about it, you're like, oh God, how decrepit and awful is this house? And then you're like, oh wait, no, that's it, cleaned up.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? It's just a hoarder's nightmare.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's the very point. I mean, I think that we do still make documentaries like this. This kind of observation has carried on more in television than it would be in film. But I mean, like the direct cinema, the cinema verite that the Maisels spearheaded, or at least, you know, are kind of closely linked with. It's much older kind of filmmaking. But their kind of involvement with that, they reckon has led into the likes of the reality TV that we have today.
Yeah.
But more than that, I mean, there's things like there was a TV series that ran about 20 years ago in the UK, all about hoarders. I mean, any of those programs, they still run them in the States. Programs about hoarders that feels that that's an extension of this. Some of the programs that are dealing with things like mental health are an extension of this. I think we do still make these kind of documentaries, but it's a little bit more obvious that the filmmakers are involved with them. I mean, one of the debates about this is whether or not you actually you should provide any kind of finance to your documentary subjects. And the Maisels did provide funding to the Edies, which helped them in terms of like their own financial status at the time.
Yeah.
As a kind of payment, they also got residuals from this documentary, which meant that, you know, not that they were kept in luxury, but you know, they still got some income from this film. So how to come back to that exploitation argument, how exploitative this is whenever they were completely 100% on board and making money from it, as opposed to somebody else making money on the back of their arguably their mental health, is a fascinating area, and one which like critics don't agree with at all. There's a lot of debate anytime this film gets discussed. There's always, and I imagine Saturday Night must have brought up some of this as well.
It definitely did. Yeah, there's a lot of people who were like, most people are like, what the hell have we just watched? What did Emma make us watch? I was like, you guys picked it. I'm just happy it got picked. It was on the list. You could have watched, I don't know, 9 to 5 was on that list.
Yes, sir.
So it's all down to you picking. But yeah, there's a lot of what the hell was that? Like, what have we watched? And then there was a lot of back and forth of like, it's very obvious that, you know, you're watching two people in the deepest throes of agoraphobia, depression, like I think rumored schizophrenia as well.
Well, she denied. It was Little Lady, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And she denied that she was
denied
schizophrenic.
it completely. So there was a lot of back and forth about that. I do think it's interesting the point that you made about obviously reality TV. So I'm like, maybe the documentary would be made now, but it would not be, the form would definitely be changed.
Yeah.
And it feels, I don't know, I think reality TV and the things that go now are definitely lean on the ick factor. And it's less about, I feel like this is approached from a, look at these eccentric people and their relationship. It was less about the squalor, whereas now it'd be 150% about, look how disgusting these people are, like it's so gross and nasty, and they would really lean into like the dirt and the decay of the situation. Where
Definitely if it was on Channel 5.
Oh, for sure. No shade to Channel 5. All the shade to Channel 5 is very bad.
No tea, no shade, no pink lemonade.
But yes, so I feel like the maybe the motives would be slightly different if it was made today. Not for it. I'm not saying the motives would be better. I'm just saying, is it better to exploit people's mental illness or directly questioning and making a palaver of them themselves, or to look at their surroundings and go, look how disgusting this is? And
I think how it would be presented today would be different in terms of like, well, this direct cinema approach, the idea is almost that you're a fly on the wall and
Yes.
there's minimal interactions from the crew, although they're clearly there. We do see them on camera.
Yeah.
We're let into the fact that this isn't.
You're aware it's not like it's any pretense about.
Yeah.
This is a snapshot. It's like this is performative to a certain.
Well, it is for very definite reasons, which we can talk about in a moment. I think the difference would be today we'd have a commentary over the top of it.
Yeah.
We'd have a voiceover that would contextualize stuff. I dare say, particularly in American television, we'd have a little disclaimer underneath about the help that was being provided to them. There'll be some kind of after show conversation about it. I think we're much better suited whenever there's an element of are these people okay? But I mean, it occurs to me that what this is a version of Steptoe and Son for real. It's the same kind of relationship that's played out in that same sort of element of some sort of squalor. It's something I hadn't thought about before. And they are very definitely Albert and Albert Steptoe, the way they're kind of constantly bickering at each other.
Yeah.
They love each other, but they clearly
their
don't.
relationship is like, I don't know if it's because, like most women, like my relationship with my mother was very, very close to this at points. Like, I don't know if it's that makes me just like, it's so emotional for me to watch it, to just be like, there's a very, very clear love and like connection and relationship there. But there's also like this resentment and this kind of, these walls that I've put up. It's a resentment on both parts. It was resentment from Little Edie because she's been dragged back into the clutches of Upper New York and the societal things that she'd escaped from, because she'd managed to get to New York and she'd been madly successful as like a writer, and she'd done some bits and pieces for screen and she was doing okay. Like, she was the typical kind of socialite.
Yeah, she was a model and everything else.
Yeah, right in the coattails of her family name, for lack of a better term. But being dragged away from that into like this depressing big old house that was just full of memories that she doesn't particularly want to be involved in. And then there's resentment on Big Edie's part because Little Edie did leave in the first place, but had a certain level of success that she never enjoyed. But then she also equally didn't live up to Big Edie's expectations. I feel like there's a lot of that going on, where it's like she both wanted her to go off and have a life that she's supposed to, marry the rich man, do this, move into the bigger house, but at the same time didn't allow her to do that because she wanted all of her attention and needed all of her attention, because she's very clearly neglected by a husband for a long time, and then neglected by, literally disowned by a family. So she has nobody else. So all of her emotional outreach is in Little Edie. So she can't let her, it's like she wants to let her go for the wrong reasons, but she's keeping her close also for the wrong reasons. Yeah. Like, there's no balance in their relationship whatsoever.
I'd agree with that. I mean, it's very easy to kind of see this and suggest that maybe the Little Lady is abusive towards her mother, which she kind of is at times.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's things like the the pate, which is actually cat food
Yeah.
with a little bit of lemon.
The label is faded. I can never tell if it's pate or if it's giblets for the cats.
And Mother doesn't seem to notice this, but then Mother's surrounded by flies and cats, and her bed is filthy disgusting, covered in bits of poo coming off it.
It's gross.
I mean, I feel sick just thinking about it
Yeah.
and picturing it. Whereas when you look, we get a brief glimpse of little Edie's room, and by comparison, it's quite clean and organised. So you kind of become aware that maybe the elements of chaos and filth are Big Edie's problem, and this is, I mean, like I've a bit of experience of this myself, without kind of getting into details on here, but I can see how those sort of situations arise, and then how difficult it is to get someone to change, especially when you're dealing with elderly people.
Yeah, it's impossible. It really is. Like, it's I think in these situations when it's an older person and it's very clearly a slow crept thing, it's like tree roots. Like, you can chop as many as you want off, but ultimately you're not going to get them all, so they're going to regrow.
Yeah.
And I always tend to side with little Edie on this. It's just very reminiscent of when I came back home. Like, my mother both wanted me to go off into the world and do all the things, but also equally was a widower or widow and wanted to be, looked after and have someone permanently at home. So we could never win. And so that, like, maybe that's why I love this film so much. It is my deepest rooted fear of ending up like this in Lisburn, in like ending up in the bungalow in Lisburn and just being like, having my mother scream at me for cat food and being like, no, I'm not and then being like, I could have made it, I could have been a director, like with fake fashion headbands. I don't know what my equivalent, probably trucker caps or something, rather than skirts as headscarves for my costume of the day.
I mean, I think the observation's one that I recognise from a number of my friends, and particularly ones where there's a parent absent, is that kind of relationship between a child, often the eldest child, and a parent can become quite codependent and I mean, I suppose we're not qualified really to go into this in great deals, but that's definitely a concern. You said something about the performative aspect of this as well, and I've read a piece today that was trying to talk about them as drag.
Yeah.
Which I thought was fascinating. This idea of performative women. I mean, it was fascinating. It was on a website called Dame, if you're interested. That performative thing is something that very definitely they do, and they're constantly competing. It's like two actors up for the starring role, and they just have decided to go at each other and outperform each other constantly for the cameras, and they're playing up to them. And little Edie clearly loves it, and Big Edie is reminiscing about her own past.
Yeah,
and again, when you talk about how complicit they are, when you talk about the exploitational aspect of it, I mean, this brings us back down to every one of those Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent kind of shows. It's like they're both up there kind of going, well, here's my sob story. They're shutting each other down because one of them had it worse than the other. They're both quite capable performers of singers and dancers and stuff. And then there's a tension as well within the men that come into their lives and their spaces. There's a lot of tension about young Jerry.
Yeah, loads.
Which is fascinating because for multiple reasons. And then little Edie starts calling out to David Maisels, where have you been all my life?
Yeah.
Because suddenly what she says to her mum is that they see me as a woman.
Yeah.
I don't see what you see. I see myself as a girl. My mother sees me as basically as an infant. Her mother infantilizes her. Infantilize, whatever the word is. But the filmmakers have come in here and they're seeing her as an actual woman, and they're fascinated by that and that relationship. And she's then torn, I think, between that desire to perform for them and to give them an element of what she wants to do and what she thinks they want, but also is recognizing that actually there's more to herself, and if she could just escape the house. Yeah. I mean, it's like a gothic horror story, really, isn't it?
It really is. Like, you could definitely take, I think, a lot of I've seen a few, and there needs to be more where people have supercutted the film together to make horror movies, because there's just the amount of times where you just have high pitched singing followed by someone just chanting "stop." It's that the bit that got me the most was a little lady. She's just singing. She's just trying to get as you said, I think she's trying to get David's attention, and she's like, oh, and she's just singing. But then Big Edie is giving her critiques, and Little Edie is not acknowledging them, and it's just they're over each other, and you're just like, the sound that must have flowed through that house on top of the smell, and you're just like, put it in the dark, and it's honestly the most frightening thing that I can think of.
When do we start? Please. Oh, you think that's comfortable? You I'm in a love with you. Oh, Edie, quit it, for God's sake. I better.
Where the camera's following her. She goes upstairs at one stage, and it's all lit by the camera as well. All you need to do is drop that exposure down a little bit, and you've got it's Blair Witch over again.
Again, I think another reason I enjoy this film so much is showing it to people, to be like, literally, this is a thing that exists.
Yeah,
like you would. It's so bonkers that you're like, the first time I saw it, reminisce about it, is the way I first saw Tiger King.
First thing is, I am not cutting my hair. I'm not changing the way I dress. I refuse to wear a suit. I am gay. I've had some kinky sex. I have tried drugs through the younger years of my life. I am broke as shit. I have a judgment against me from some bitch down there in Florida.
Where someone was like, it gets weirder. I'm like, it gets weirder? How does it get weirder? And every segment, it genuinely gets more strange, and you're like, I didn't think it was humanly possible for this to be weirder. And then they throw a birthday party. And then you're like,
how does anyone voluntarily go into that house that's not making a documentary
honestly,
about squalor? And
they're just like, oh, I got you a gift. It's here. I've made a sign. And it's like, oh my God, what is going on? and then literally 10 minutes later, she's up feeding the raccoons. Not even just dealing with them. She's got a bag of cat food, and she's making sure that they're well fed. And I'm just like, again, how could this get weirder? And it just keeps going and going. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned them being kind of like drag performers, because that's how I first ran into it. Okay. Is because I really like a drag queen called Jinx Monsoon, RuPaul's Drag Race season 5.
Are you serious, Doctor Who?
She is. Yes. And she's amazing, and she was also in Chicago on Broadway. She's the first drag performer they've had on the Broadway production doing Mama Morton. Okay, yeah. Which is very cool. But anyway, we digress. But anyway, she did Little Edie as her character for one of the games that they do.
Direct from Grey Gardens, it's Little Edie Beale. Little Edie.
Well, I don't know her personally, but she looks older than Mother Darling. So I said, when she steps into the voting booth, she just seizures. Spelling?
Seizures. Not a match.
Hell is this little... This can't be a thing. And she did such a good impression of her that I sought out the film and became really obsessed with it. And I was like, this is so bizarre. And then I also saw the Drew Barrymore...
the HBO 2009 movie, her and Jessica Lange.
And I was like, they're frighteningly... It's not a bad film.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's not a bad film. I would say it's a made-for-TV film. But if you watched it first and then watched the documentary, I feel like you'd be you'd watch the film going, they've really hammed this up. And then if you watch the documentary, you'd be like, they've really toned this down. It's, but no, they're both very good. That's how I got kind of into the realms of it. So it's funny how Little Lady has become like an icon of like queer culture without meaning to, just by being eccentric and having alopecia and just wearing headscarves everywhere. But yeah, like, because again, anywhere you look, I mean, I suppose if Andy Warhol was involved with this, with the first documentary, I believe, for a while. So I'm like, of course, like the queers went, oh, fashion. And you're like, is it though? Is it though? Is a broken skirt on your head fashion, or is it a cry for help? That is the title of my autobiography.
I think, I mean, I guess within the wider context, particularly because this film now doesn't exist on its own. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. There's obviously that original film from 1972 has come out. The Maisels then released a second film, the Beales of Grey Gardens in 2006, which is a lot of the footage that they didn't use in the first Grey Gardens film. And then there's been various other kind of spin-offs. So it's a bigger story, but I guess part of the fascination is because they essentially are living like people you would expect in the worst economic situation to be living. Maybe slightly broken, caught up a lot of crowd and rubbish and too many animals. Crazy cat ladies. They are
literally
crazy cat ladies.
Literally crazy cat ladies.
So it's all that kind of squalor and kind of, if we said this was set in a housing estate, you would go, yep, okay, I buy that, like The Scheme or The Estate, if you watch either of those BBC TV series. It's like something like that, but they're part of the upper echelons of New York society. These are society girls. This is a house that should have been glamorous and exotic and is today, after much restoration to subsequent owners. So I think that's where our fascination really lies, is that, we have this idea about what it means to be wealthy, to be part of society, and then you see these people, and actually, when you get down to it, it's a little bit make do amend. And if you let it sit for too long, it's like, well, let's just make do and won't bother mending anything. And I think from having had a couple of brushes with a few people who are from classier people in Northern Ireland, upper echelons of society in their older age and stuff, I'm aware that this does happen a lot. And somehow, that as public, as regular people, we're held back from that. So that's part of the fascination, I think. But the drag elements, that kind of theatrical stuff, is fascinating. But lost my train of thought there. So they were in that kind of society that also involved all the celebrities.
Yeah.
Less so for them at that point than maybe the cousins who were bringing them in. I mean, obviously you got the Kennedys and all their accoutrements. The Maisels brought in the Rolling Stones crowd, or they were brought in because they were part of the Rolling Stones crowd. They were hanging out with Mick Jagger and Bianca Jagger. As you say, Andy Warhol pops up and some of the other footage from the time. So there's all that stuff going on. And I think I find it very hard not to see Little Edie as somebody who maybe could have been involved in things like fashion and showbiz. And I mean, I think part of it is necessity. I think she's got bugger all money, bugger all resources, and so she is just like adapting everything. Her mother's, I hadn't even realised until I was kind of reading up on this, made her change her outfits 10 times a day, and specifically used the words costume.
This is the best costume for the day.
Yep.
So again, linking back to drag and performative art, this is what this is. This is just constant performance. And that's even before the cameras got in.
Yeah. It's that thing of like, what I find very fascinating is that it's this generational wealth gets lost, but the habits and the training of having wealth doesn't. So like you change for, like if you're wealthy, you change 10 times a day. You change for dinner, you change for breakfast. You have an outfit for everywhere you go. So when you'd think if you literally didn't have the outfits anymore, you didn't have the place to go anymore, that those habits would go away. But in fact, I think Big Edie especially like really fixated on like, it's this time of day, so we're going to change and do this. We're going to go sunbathing, and then we're going to come in and we're going to change, and then it's dinner and blah 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 blah. But she wasn't doing it herself.
No,
she was making Little Lady do it because Big Edie had just lost, I think, all sense of who she herself was. So it's very clear that Little Edie's her avatar, her thinner, prettier avatar.
Well, so she's not thin enough for her.
No,
I mean, amongst the criticisms that are made, or there's comments about her weight, about how she should look, about what she could have been doing, how she couldn't have done this, how she could do this. And I mean, there's points where Little Edie goes off camera, goes away from her mother, and it's the bits when she's outside the house, when she's on the beach, when she's out in the porch, and she's talking to the Maisels, and asks them very direct questions for basically for counselling. Do you think I should do this? And sort of says, until my mum dies, I can't leave this place. But while I'm here, I have nothing. I'm basically just doing everything that she tells me. I think there's a lot of denial about her own responsibilities and capabilities as well, but it is a stark warning for anybody who's been in a controlling familial relationship. And it's disturbing because you actually, for anyone who's been in any kind of abusive relationship, I mean, it rings true. You have somebody who's aware of what's going on, of how they're being controlled, about the manipulation that's going on emotionally and physically, and yet they cannot break away because, I mean, it's the classic one. I mean, again, to draw that comparison between abusive relationships, people always talk about, the abuser having to do something before they can get away, have to wait until they snuff it, or they run away, or they end the relationship, and it's the same sort of thing. It's like she's waiting for her mother to end the relationship, either by dying or letting her free, and yet she's also worried about the cuckoo in the nest when the handyman gets moved in because it's one of her people, because it's one of Big Edie's sort of fancies, whereas Little Edie doesn't really care, and her people are not allowed into the house in the same way. So it's fascinating and disturbing in equal measure, and I realise that, having said it, this film I don't connect with, I probably do quite a lot. But it's really uncomfortable watching. It's
so uncomfortable. And I think that is one of the things that I do love about it. I don't necessarily like films because they make me feel good. I think that's obvious from any film choices that I've had. And this one I find really difficult to watch. And it's one of the reasons that I love it, because, again, I'm like, it does resonate to me on a personal level, but at the same time, I'm like, the lack of care that people have for their own relatives sometimes is really disturbing. And that, again, resonates true. I think a lot of people have had that experience. Like, you hear it all the time where there's like little old men and little old women left to their own devices, eating tin food and getting scurvy because they have an ungrateful, like, son, daughter / whatever has left them to rot. But at the same time, it's like, well, why? Why are these left in this situation? But again, with them being upper crust kind of thing, and it's like, again, it's that old adage, like, money cannot buy you happiness or love, and very clearly it didn't. No. So, and then what happens when that gets ripped away and these shells of people are left to basically living in a grand manner that is dilapidated and falls to ruin, very slowly decaying. It's a horrible metaphor for what's happened to these women, but at the same time, it's kind of, I find it beautiful in an otherworldly kind of horrific way. Like when you see a derelict house and it's like oddly beautiful, I'm like, that's how I feel about this film.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair summary of it.
Usually I watch it on my phone screen under the covers, like tucked in, like crying and sobbing all the way through. It's the same reason I can't watch Muriel's Wedding. It makes me cry too much.
In your shape, you relieve stress on muscles.
You're terrible, Muriel.
You watched this too many times.
I have. It resonates with me too much. It's cut steep. But yeah, no, I do think I think you have to watch it at least once. Even if you hate it and you are trifling to get through it, I think you should watch it once and be like, I do think it's just a great example of what can go wrong in people's lives and what we have expectations of are never together the same way.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was Grey Gardens. Any final thoughts? We'll wrap this shing bang up.
I think I probably agree with you that it's worth watching once. I didn't really appreciate its resonance, its relevance when I first saw it. It just left me really, really cold. And watching it now, I still find it a really hard watch. It's not it's not where I would go with, you know, if I want to watch documentaries, I want to discover like cinema verite, or I want to watch something about direct cinema. However, The Maisels are much loved. The Belfast Film Festival has an award named after them. You know, like I'm aware of the name. I'm aware how important they are as filmmakers, and that alone is reason enough to watch it. But it's a really, really disturbing, uncomfortable film, and I just recommend, if you are going to go down, sit down and watch it, that you kind of, I don't know, have a really, really strong cup of tea with it. Strong cup of tea, no animals. It will make you feel so itchy and dirty the first time you watch it. Yeah. I would say good scotch, in the dark, alone, so that no one judges you. Yeah, I'm going to go back home now and hoover up the house. Is how I feel. Yeah, and have a shower afterwards. Yeah. You'll need it. Yeah. But cool. Well, thank you for joining me again today, Robert, for You've Never Seen. And you've never seen us. We're back. Hello. Bye. So thank you for joining us today, guys. We will have this edit out hopefully at the end of this week for all of our special film club fans. And thank you for supporting us as usual. So please don't hesitate to like, subscribe and recommend the channel to other people that you think would like us, and to join in our lovely membership, which we have Reanimator coming up in June, which I think is going to be really cool. I think I've never seen it. It's finally a film I've never seen. Ooh. So this is going to be the first time I see it, which is always lovely. And then our second to last film is The Producers, our last film is Producers in July. So get voting on our Never Seen It poll that we have up for members only. We need your input ASAP so that we can get programming. That is really important. But once again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching. My name's Emma from Accidental Theatre. This is Robert J. Simpson from Cinepunkt, and we run Never Seen It Film Club, the film club where we watch films that you've never seen. We'd really appreciate it if you could come and join in to our membership program, where you can come and see a lovely film in our beautiful book bar every month, and it costs just £3 a month, and it's amazing. The membership button should be right about here, so if you're just there. And if you can't join the membership, that's no problem, just like and subscribe to the channel.